I still remember the way my mom avoided my eyes. That morning, my dad sat behind his desk, pretending to read the quarterly reports I'd helped prepare. The office smelled like burnt coffee and cheap perfume, and something inside me already knew something was wrong. Evan, my dad, started using that tone he reserved for serious things, the same one he used when Grandma died. He decided to let you go. I laughed at first. I thought it was a joke. I'd been working for their company, a mid-sized logistics firm, since college. I'd brought in new clients, updated their tech systems, even helped them survive the pandemic slump. I was their only child, their future CEO. But they weren't joking. My mom reached across the table and took my hand. Honey, this isn't about you. The company is struggling. We can't afford your salary anymore. I pulled my hand back. You mean you can't afford your son? Dad sighed. Don't make this harder. We're not firing you as family. We're just restructuring. You'll always be our son. It felt like being stabbed with a smile. I walked out of that office with my dignity packed in a cardboard box and their voices echoing in my ears. You'll understand one day? A week later, I found out the truth. They didn't fire me because of money. They fired me because they hired my cousin Jason. Instead, Jason, the golden boy who'd always been the real businessman in my grandparents' eyes. He offered to work for free to help the company bounce back. And my parents, ever desperate for approval, took the bait. I realized then that it wasn't about money. It was about legacy. And I swore I'd make them regret it. For the first few weeks after being fired, I felt like a ghost. My entire life had been built around my parents' company. Every childhood dinner was about shipments, clients, and quarterly goals. Even our vacations revolved around business opportunities. Now it was gone. I tried applying elsewhere. But every company in our city knew my parents, and every rejection email felt more personal than the last. I stopped answering calls, stopped shaving, stopped pretending I was okay. Then one night I met Maya. She was a logistics analyst from another firm, sharp, sarcastic, the kind of woman who could read a contract like a novel. We met at a networking event I almost skipped. She asked me why I looked like I'd rather be anywhere else, and I told her the truth. She didn't pity me. She just said, so start your own thing. You already know how the system works. I left. You mean compete against my parents? They got 20 years of reputation. Reputation doesn't mean efficiency. She said, especially if they're still doing business. Like it's 1999. That hit hard because she was right. My parents refused to adapt. They ignored digital optimization, clung to paper systems, and treated every suggestion like an insult. So with Mayo's help, I started sketching out ideas for my own company, small, lean and modern, no bureaucracy, no emotional blackmail, just smart, fast logistics. We worked out of my apartment. I maxed out my savings, sold my car, and spent nights building a platform that could automate the very processes my parents' firm was too proud to update. Within 6 months, we landed our first client, one that used to belong to my parents. They had left because my cousin Jason forgot to process their invoices correctly. That was the first domino. By the end of the first year, our startup, Vantage Logistics, had taken 5 of their top clients. My parents' company was still standing, but the cracks were visible. Then one morning, I got an email from my mother. The subject line read, "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen, feeling both sick and satisfied. She was reaching out, not as my mom, but as a CEO, realizing her legacy was slipping away. And for the first time, I didn't rush to reply. I let her wait. I didn't respond to my mom's email right away. For 3 days, I hovered over the reply button, reading and rereading her short message. Evan, can we talk? It's about the company. Please. No apology. No explanation. Just business. Finally, I agreed to meet her at a small cafe downtown. When she walked in, she looked smaller, somehow tired. Hollow, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. Evan, she said softly, taking off her sunglasses. You look good. Better than when you fired me, I said, sipping my coffee. She flinched. You know it wasn't personal. It was, I said. You replaced me with Jason. That's pretty personal. Her lips trembled, and for a moment I saw guilt flicker behind her eyes. But then she exhaled and switched to CEO mode. The company's struggling, she said. Jason's not working out. He made some bad deals. And your father has been trying to fix them, but we're running out of time. She looked at me, her voice barely above a whisper. We need your help, Evan. You know this business better than anyone. We can't lose everything your grandparents built. I stared at her. Part of me wanted to laugh. Another part, the stupid sentimental part, wanted to hug her. Instead, I said, you fired me because I was too expensive. What's changed? She hesitated. Then she told me the truth. Their biggest client had left, the same client who signed with me. Jason had blamed me publicly, claiming I'd stolen their contacts illegally. My parents believed him. Now their reputation was collapsing. I looked her in the eye and said, you didn't lose that client because of me. You lost them because you trusted the wrong people. She blinked, tears welling. So you want help? I leaned back. Oh, I'll think about it. That night, Maya was waiting in my apartment. When I told her everything, her jaw tightened. I want you back now that you're winning. Typical, I nodded. But maybe it's time to go see how bad it really is. She frowned. Evan, don't let guilt ruin your plan. I'm not, I said. I just want to see the wreckage. The next morning I drove to my parents' office. The once busy parking lot was half empty. The lobby plants were dying. Jason's expensive car wasn't either. And when I walked inside, the receptionist whispered to me, Jason quit yesterday. Took 2 clients with him. My parents had built their empire on family loyalty. Now family was what was tearing it apart. Walking through my parentheses felt like stepping into a memory that had stopped breathing. Desks sat empty. Phones rang unanswered. The framed photos of family, barbecues, and company milestones hung crooked on the walls. My father was in his office, sleeves rolled up, staring at spreadsheets, like a man trying to solve a puzzle, missing half the pieces. Evan, he said when he saw me. His voice cracked on the second syllable. You came, I wanted to see what I was fired from. I said. He gave a dry laugh. Fair. Sit down. He looked like the confident businessman I'd grown up fearing. He looked defeated. His once steady hands trembled as he handed me a folder. Inside were bank statements, unpaid invoices, and a balance sheet soaked in red ink. Jason drained our reserves, he said quietly. Used company money to fund some crypto nonsense. When it collapsed, so did we. I skimmed the pages and my stomach turned. You didn't notice 500,000 disappearing? He rubbed his forehead. Your mother trusted him. She thought keeping family close would keep the company strong. I laughed bitter sharp. Yeah, that strategy worked great. He didn't respond. Instead, he looked up at me, with eyes full of something I'd never seen before. Humility. Evan, you're all that's left. You built something from nothing. I know I messed up, but if there is any part of you that still sees this as home, help us. His words hung in the air. For a moment, the angry son in me clashed with the child, who used to sit in this very office, doodling company logos on scrap paper. I'll think about it, I said finally. But I want full access to the financials. No filters. No secrets. He nodded quickly. Whatever you need. I spent the next 3 days combing through their records. The deeper I went, the uglier it got. Hidden debts, unpaid taxes. Deals signed under Jason S. name that could trigger lawsuits. But then I found something worse. An old ledger handwritten, tucked into a drawer, listing temporary loans from my college fund. My name, my account. Money I thought had vanished during freshman year. They hadn't forgotten to pay my tuition once. They'd taken my savings to bail out the company years ago and never told me. That night, as I sat in my car outside their office, I stared at the building that represented everything I'd and everything that had broken me. Maybe saving it wasn't the right thing to do. Maybe letting it burn was that. Didn't he sleep that night? The numbers kept replaying in my mind. The missing tuition money, the fake loan notes, the signatures in my father's handwriting. I worked 2 part-time jobs in college because they told me my savings were gone due to bank errors. And the whole time, they've been using my money to plug the holes Jason created. By morning, my anger had cooled into something sharper. Control. I showed up at their house around noon. My mom opened the door, her face lighting up with that practiced warmth she used when pretending everything was fine. Evan, sweetheart. Come in, your father asked. I know, I said. I saw the financials. The color drained from her face. What I found the ledger. I said flatly. The one with my name on it. You took my college fund. She froze, then whispered. We did it for you. For me, I laughed bitterly. You stole my savings so you could keep paying Jason S. salary. It wasn't like that, my father said from behind her. His voice tired but defensive. We thought we'd repay it back. The company was in trouble, and you were already in college. So you figured I wouldn't notice. My mom stepped close, her eyes glistening. Evan, we were drowning. If the company failed, we'd lose the house. Everything your grandparents built would be gone. We thought we could fix it before you found out. I stared at them, realizing that every sacrifice they bragged about had come at my expense. They didn't save the business for family. They used family to save the business. I took a slow breath. You want my help now, right? My father nodded. Yes, you can save this company. You always had the mind for it. All right, I said. My voice calm, maybe too calm. I'll help. My mother exhaled in relief. Oh, thank God, Evan. I knew, but on one condition, I interrupted. I'm in full control. No Jason, no interference. No backseat management. If I do this, I do it my way. They exchanged nervous glances, but desperation won. Deal, my father said. I smiled, shaking his hand. The same hand that had signed away my future once before. They thought I was coming back as their savior. They didn't know. I was coming back as their executioner. When I walked back into the office the following week, everyone stared. It wasn't he. The same quiet pity I'd felt when I was first fired. This time it was curiosity. Suspicion, maybe even fear. The prodigal son had returned. My dad introduced me at a staff meeting as the acting operations director, which basically meant temporary savior. My mother clapped first, forcing everyone else to follow. They thought I was there to rebuild. They didn't realize I was already building something else behind the scenes. Step one of my plan was simple: modernize everything. I ordered digital overhauls, AI tracking systems, and logistics automation software, the same tools I'd used at my own company. My parents thought it was me being efficient. What they didn't was that the contracts and licenses, all LED back to Vantage Logistics, my firm. They were paying me to fix their company. Step 2, regain the trust of the employees. I held one-on-one meetings with every department head, listened to their complaints, and quietly learned where the rot was deepest. Everyone hated Jason. Everyone knew my parents had been covering for him. By the end of my second week, half the staff had started coming to me for approvals instead of my father. My parents called it momentum. I called it leverage. Then something unexpected happened. They started trusting me again. Mom began leaving her office door open. Dad asked my opinion on strategy. They even invited me to dinner again, as if pretending we'd always been a happy family. And for a second, just a second, I almost believed it. But then Maya reminded me why I was doing this. They took everything from you, she said. Don't mistake guilt for healing. She was right. I wasn't here for closure. I was here for justice. By the end of the month, I destabilized their finances, cut unnecessary expenses, and restored client confidence. The company looked healthy again on paper. What my parents didn't know was that I'd also quietly transferred their key supplier contracts under Vantage's name. Without realizing it, they'd become dependent on me. The next invoice they'd sign would be the beginning of the end. Because once they couldn't pay it, I'd own them. It was strange how quickly my parents started treating me like the company's savior again. Dad bragged to old clients that I was always meant to lead. Mom brought me coffee in meetings like she used to when I was an intern. For a while, it almost felt normal. But beneath that warmth, I could feel the tension rising, the kind that comes when something important is happening just out of sight. I had the company's supply chain rerouted through Vantage, my own firm, under a complex web of shell contracts. Everything was technically legal. I made sure of that. But if my parents defaulted on a single payment, I'd own their entire logistics infrastructure. Maya warned me I was getting too close. You're starting to sound like them, she said one night, sitting across from me in my apartment as invoices and reports littered the floor. I shook my head no. I'm doing what they taught me. Business is bloodless. She frowned. Is it because you're bleeding for it, evangelist? The next morning, I got an unexpected visit. My mother walked into my office. No makeup, no smile, just exhaustion. She closed the door quietly and said, "What are you really doing, Evan?" I looked up from my screen. "Fixing your company." She didn't move. "I know you. You're angry. You think I don't see it, but I do this. I send tea about saving us. This is about revenge." For a moment I said nothing. Then I smiled faintly. If I wanted revenge, Mom, I did let the company collapse Her voice broke. Then why are you doing this? I leaned back staring at her. Maybe I want you to feel what I felt. The helplessness, the betrayal. She stepped closer. We made mistakes, Evan. But we're still your parents. Don't destroy everything just to prove a point. For a second, I almost believed her. Until I saw the company checkbook in her hand. She was planning to override one of my supplier payments. Why wouldn't he do that? I said quietly. She froze. Why? Because that payment. I sent it to a supplier, I said. It's to me. You default on it, and I own your logistics rights. Her face went pale. I stood up calm, controlled. You wanted my help, you got it. But you didn't ask what it would cost. She stared at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. Then she whispered, you really have become your father. And she walked out. The door closed softly behind her, but it felt like a slam point. 2 days after my confrontation with Mom, my father called an emergency board meeting. The tone in his voice wasn't panic. It was anger. The kind of anger I hadn't heard since I was a teenager, sneaking out past curfew. When I walked into the conference room, everyone was already there. Mom, pale and tight-lipped, the accountant avoiding my eyes, and my father sitting at the head of the table with a folder in front of him. He didn't speak right away. He just slid a stack of papers across the table. It was a print out of the Vantage Logistics contracts. My contracts. Care to explain, he said slowly. Why every major supplier we work with now has ties to your company. I didn't flinch. Because your suppliers were inefficient. I found better ones. His voice rose. Better ones that you own. Do you realize what this looks like? I realize it looks like I saved your business. He slammed his hand on the table. No, it looks like you're stealing it. The room went silent. I leaned forward. You stole from me first, Dad. My college fund, my future. My respect. I'm just taking back what is mine. His face turned red. We did what we had to do for this family. And I'm doing what I have to do for myself. Mom covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. Please, both of you. But I wasn't finished. You built this company on loyalty and lies. I built mine on honesty and hard work. The difference is mine is thriving. Dad stood up slowly, his voice cold. You wanted to be in control, Evan? Now you are. Congratulations. You've become exactly what I feared you'd be. He gathered the papers, pushed back his chair, and walked out. Mom followed him silently, leaving me alone at the table, surrounded by the hollow echoes of my own victory. That night, Maya came over. I told her everything. She listened, then said quietly, So now what you going to take it all? I didn't answer because the next morning, I got a call from the bank. My parents had defaulted on their payment. The clause triggered Vantage Logistics, now legally owned their company's logistics division. It was over, and for the first time, I didn't feel triumph. I felt nothing. The news spread fast. Within a week, the transfer papers were signed, and my company officially controlled every logistical arm of my parents' business. Their office, their routes, their clients, all of it now answered to me. Technically, they still own the name, but without the infrastructure. A name was worthless. I expected it to feel euphoric, the final satisfying snap of poetic justice. Instead, it felt quiet. empty like standing in an echo chamber, where even victory sounded like loss. When I went back to the office to finalize the handover, my father's office was already stripped bare. Just a few cardboard boxes and a family photo left behind, one of us at my college graduation. He had his arm around me, both of us smiling, like we believed life would always move upward. The receptionist whispered. They came in early, cleaned out everything. I nodded and walked into my new office, their old one. Same desk, same view, same ghost. An hour later, my mother appeared at the door. She looked smaller than I remembered, her hands shaking as she held out a white envelope. "This is for you," she said. Inside was a check, the exact amount they had taken from my college fund. All those years ago, I sold my jewelry. She said softly, "It's not much, but it's yours." I stared at it, throat tight. "You don't have to, yes." "We do," she interrupted. "You earned your revenge, Evangelist. Congratulations, son. You won." She turned to leave, but I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The words "you won" echoed in my head like a curse. Later that night, I drove past their house. The lights were off. A for sale sign stood in the yard. Maya called me, her voice quiet. "You okay?" "I don't know." I said, "They're losing everything, and I made it happen." She paused. "They did the same to you. Doesn't he that make it fair?" "Maybe," I said, watching the dark windows. "But fairness doesn't feel like peace." I had everything I wanted: power, respect, control. But the one thing I couldn't buy was the family ID, just destroyed. I sat alone in my office, the city lights spilling across the windows like shattered glass. Vantage Logistics was thriving. Profits were up. Clients were loyal. Everything ID dreamed of achieved. And yet it felt hollow. I thought about my parents. The people who had shaped me, betrayed me, and taught me everything I knew about business and survival. I thought about their faces when they realized they'd lost everything. To me, Mom asked quiet surrender. Dad is silent rage. For weeks, I had replayed every decision, every calculated move that led here. And for the first time, I asked myself a question I had never dared. Was I better off than them, or worse? My phone buzzed. It was my mother. "Evan, if you ever want to talk, we'll be here." Her words were a lifeline, tossed across an ocean I still wanted to cross. I stared at the message. Part of me wanted to delete it. Part of me wanted to reply, apologize, beg for forgiveness, even though I knew I had the right to be angry. Maya, sitting across from me, watched silently. "You've done what you set out to do," she said. "Maybe now you need to ask what comes next." I nodded. The choice was mine. I could rebuild the bridge, try to mend the family I'd destroyed, or leave them behind and walk away with only the empire I'd earned. I thought about the ledger, the stolen college funds, the hollow victories, and the echo of Mom's words. "You really have become your father." I realized then that winning wasn't about power. It was about knowing when to let go. So I picked up the phone and dialed my mother's number. I didn't have the words yet. I just wanted to hear her voice. She answered after a long pause, quiet and trembling. "Evan." "Hi, Mom." I said. The pause lingered. But it wasn't empty this time. It was hopeful. I didn't know if I'd ever forgive them. I didn't know if they'd forgive me. But for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt since I was fired. Family. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start over.